In it for you. That's the message the NDP is pitching to Canadians ahead of the upcoming federal election. The party is the last of the five to unveil its campaign slogan and advertising. They did so earlier today.
I believe that government should work for all of us. Not just saying the right things, but actually doing them. Now that's different.
However, at least 14 former provincial NDP candidates aren't buying that message. Today, the group from New Brunswick announced they're withdrawing support for NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and will instead back Green Party leader Elizabeth May. Here's what one of those defectors had to say.
It's because the leadership of the NDP saw themselves as an ideological body who wanted to bring in sort of ideologies and not necessarily what was in the best interest of people. Not saying that those ideologies wouldn't help people, but they just couldn't see the bigger picture, in my opinion.
They also blame Jagmeet Singh's absence in New Brunswick. He hasn't visited the province since becoming NDP leader in 2017. So what does the party have to say in response? Alexandre Boulouris is the deputy leader of the federal NDP. He joins us now from Montreal. Hi, Mr. Boulouris. Nice to see you again. Thanks for making time.
My pleasure.
Mr. Boulouris, 14 New Democrats in New Brunswick announced this afternoon that they're jumping ship to the Greens. They wrote, quote, "In choosing the NDP both federally and provincially, we had hoped to gain access to a vehicle that would allow us to make real change for those we care most for." Clearly, they do not think that your party is that vehicle anymore, that it won't be successful enough in the election to, quote unquote, make real change. How are you addressing their concerns?
Obviously, I disagree with them. I clearly have a different view about our vehicle. I think that we have a really ambitious and complete plan to tackle climate change, and we also bring this idea of social justice, that what is really the idea of the Green New Deal with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm sorry that they left us, but I will continue to do my job. And our plan got a really good rating from one of your colleagues on the CBC website, way better than the Green Party. So I don't really understand their choice, but they have to explain themselves.
I guess I read their letter as not so much an indictment of your platform, but rather your chances of winning this election. And they point to, for example, the fact that the leader of your party, Jagmeet Singh, has never once visited the province since becoming leader of the party. Isn't that a problem?
Maybe they have some complaints and grievances against the leader. What I'm thinking is that elections matters. No party has one vote in a box right now. Anything can happen, and we saw sudden change in recent elections in Canada or in Quebec. So let's the voters decide, and let's do our job to make sure that we bring more NDP MPs into Parliament.
I take your point that anything can happen, but do you take their point that, I mean, Jagmeet Singh is running to be Prime Minister, right? That you would assume that of the entire country. He's been leader for 2 years. Why wouldn't he stop at some point in New Brunswick unless that part of the country is of no value to your party?
Every provinces are equally important. I don't know exactly why he was not able to get there before. I'm quite sure he will be there during the next weeks for the federal election. We have candidates in New Brunswick, and we will try to re-elect a member like Mr. Yvon Godin. He was a great MP when he was there.
Is your party ready for this election? Right now, you have, according to a spokesperson, 180 nominated candidates. There are, of course, 338 ridings.
Our process is always longer than other parties. Leader cannot decide who will run in each riding. We have to respect the members. We have some delays. We also have obligation that every riding association seeking women and also equity groups. So it takes a little bit more time, but we are no stress. We are confident we will have a candidate in every riding, and we will have a slate of candidates with more women and more diversity than any other party in Canada, and we are very proud of that.
You may not be stressed, but what about the 158 people who become candidates just in the next week, and there could be an election called any day now? Aren't you sort of making things unfair for them? Aren't they at a disadvantage?
Sometimes, you can have candidates who will jump just at the beginning of the campaign, and they have different reasons for that. We will announce, a star candidate for the province of Quebec tomorrow. We are very proud of that, and for that person, it was the right timing was right now. So it depends. Sometimes it doesn't matter because the people can take 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks to make a real hard campaign and be elected. It happened in the past.
Are you running a full plane? There was a report in the Globe and Mail today that your party would just be renting one by the hour rather than chartering it for the entire campaign.
I don't know the plan for the leaders' transportation, but the important thing is that we have a good offer for Canadians and for Quebecers. I think the people will see that they can trust us, and we will go to Parliament to fight for their interests, and our hands are not tied with big corporations. That's a big difference between us and the two old parties.
I understand the point you're making, definitely about your platform and the sort of message that you're bringing to this election. I guess my questioning is around what I'm sure you're familiar with. A lot of reporting around the strength of your party or the lack thereof at this juncture, so close to the call of an election. For example, even in Quebec, the poll tracker, also found on the CBC website, puts your party as of September 2nd at about 9.3%. Even the Green Party is above that at 10%. The Liberals, for example, at 35%. What are you hearing at the doors? Have people written your party off?
No, not at all. They know that we are there. They are proud of the work we did in the last 4 years, and they know that they can count on us to be able to fight for their interests, their families, their work. And right now, I hear a lot of people saying, "Okay, continue your job, and you can count on us." Other people are shopping. The percentage of people undecided is really, really high. So it shows us that anything can happen in the election, and the electoral campaign will matter. The debates will matter. So I'm confident that with the energy and the charm of Jagmeet Singh, we'll be able to persuade voters to support the NDP.
If you're hearing all that at the door, if you're hearing people reinforcing your message at the door, why are the numbers, and I'm not saying that polls are the be-all end-all, but why have the numbers so consistently not shown that?
Because I think that people are looking around. They're not sure right now. So I take those numbers with a grain of salt, and anything will happen. And I'm sure that the support for the NDP will go above that.
Is money going to be a problem for your campaign?
We're struggling always because we have less money than the two big historical parties in Canada, Liberals and Conservatives, who always have also problems, scandal problems with a private company giving them money. But
they have a lot. To be fair, those parties have a lot of individual donors as well.
Also, it's true. But
you're right in certain instances.
When there's a scandal about fundraising, it's never with the NDP.
No, but at the same time, there's not a lot of money coming into your coffers, and I wonder how much of a problem that poses for your campaign.
We will have a bold campaign. We will have a modest campaign, but we will have enough to pass our message and reach Canadians and voters and be able to gain their support during this election.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Boulerice. Appreciate your time today. That's Alexandre Boulerice, Deputy Leader of the Federal NDP. Low poll numbers, a slow nomination process, a limited campaign budget, and questions about their campaign travel plans. Add to that the defection of provincial NDP candidates in New Brunswick to the Greens. The NDP, though, is hoping to change some minds with some new political ads. Will they work? What more must the party do to turn things around before the campaign really starts? It's time for the Power Panel. In Vancouver, former Conservative Cabinet Minister Stockwell Day joins us. Political consultant and columnist Tiffany Gooch is with us from Toronto. And here with me in studio, political commentator and former NDP MP Françoise Boivin, Le Devoir's Marie Vastel, and former Green Party Deputy Leader and former Ottawa City Councillor David Chernyshenko, author of Burning Souls. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Nice to see a big power panel today. Françoise, I have to start with you. No stress, Mr. Boulerice says. No stress. Do you buy it?
No, and having had Monsieur Boulerice as my vice president when I was presiding over, I know he's an excellent communicator, always calm. So maybe he doesn't feel the stress, but I can bet my life that a lot of the candidates or candidates-to-be or candidates that they want to get and who might not be sure if they want to run this time are probably nervous. What was supposed to be a good day for them, because this morning when I woke up and I saw the clip of I was watching a show with Mario Dumont, who's big thing in Quebec, and who had Alexandre Boulerice discussing that ad, and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was humane. It had some candor.
We have that ad. Let's play it for a second and show people what we're talking about.
I don't work for the wealthy and well-connected. I don't think government should be run for their benefit, like it has for decades. I believe that government should work for all of us.
And in French, what was interesting is that the clip starts with him, and we see his hair for the first time. I personally, but first time, and he's putting his turban on, and it was addressing exactly the issue that has been a bit commotional in Quebec. So I thought overall it was an interesting ad, and with the visibility it got on many airwaves, it was awesome, free publicity. I'm sure the NDP needs free publicity right now. And then that story of 14 ex-candidate, and of course media jumps in, and I'm sure I can just picture my ex-colleagues and organizers going, man, why can't we just run on good news, and every time there's something bad, we become the headline of all the political shows and so on and so forth. But my recommendation to them is that don't play victim, don't play innocent, and don't play giraffe that puts its head in the sand, for the simple reason that you have to address that fact that it's not necessarily going well, that it's right questions that the media are asking of them. How many candidates? When will they be named? Election, guys, is coming soon. When will you be ready? Do you have money?
And to that, Mr. Boulerice, David was sort of not dismissive, but sort of ignored the part of my questions that were centered on the viability of the party, and instead sort of defended that the party has a good and thoughtful platform and the message that they believe will sell. The problem is, like the example of this afternoon shows, in New Brunswick, at least, for example, these candidates are not interested in the NDP's message.
I would love to know what was behind the coordination of these people coming together and making an announcement that way, because it's one thing to have people who are members of a party, have run for that party, have concerns about the leadership, perhaps about the platform, but to actually coordinate something like that has although not a coup, has a bit of an air of a coup, palace coup.
We have one of them on a bit later, I'll ask.
I would love to know, because clearly that wasn't just one person who thought, yeah, this isn't for me anymore. If they did, they then called up a whole lot of others and said, are you feeling the same way? And so the end result is that it's both a blow to the NDP and a large gust in the sales of the Greens.
Tiffany, what would your advice to the NDP be right now?
I think that, first of all, that during an election, all politics are local, and the politics of being able to be present in the ridings where people are hoping to see a leader is always going to be important. And so I'd say I've always, frankly, believed that Jagmeet, when in person and when able to connect directly with people, is actually quite fantastic on the road. But getting him out in front of those people is important. And to the point made earlier, I can't say what took place before that, but if there were enough requests and questions of when he was going to make it out there, and they weren't getting any clear answers and were feeling like they were being ignored, then that would absolutely play a role. But that's going to take place across the entire country, and it's taken this long for him to find a way to make sure that there's a presence of some sort in each riding. It's going to be difficult to really sell that local side of the politics, get their message out very locally to ridings that aren't feeling like they're getting love. I'm from Windsor, in a very strong-held, usually NDP area, where Brian Massey, who's held that seat for quite a long time, is polling neck and neck with Xander Pupatello, who's the potential nominee for the Liberals. And I'd say that is a real blow for them, and they really need to find a way to really put the pressure down on getting to those local ridings where people want to see them.
Stockwell, Tiffany's touching on the fact that these defectors today pointed out that Mr. Singh, since he became leader, has never visited New Brunswick. I asked Mr. Boulerice about that, and he said that he would eventually get there. He also, and the party has insisted that they will be running candidates in New Brunswick. Is it strategic as well on the part of the NDP? We know that they're going to be focusing their limited resources on the parts of the country they feel they have a better shot at.
Yeah, it goes directly to Tiffany's point, Vashi, that local politics make a difference. I'm going to be predictive here at some risk and say the NDP are toast. And when I say that, you'll know it's not partisan, because I boldly predicted, to the chagrin of my Conservative friends a few years ago, that Rachel Notley would win in the election for the NDP in Alberta. And you have to face facts. They've got half their candidates nominated. They've got a key person in Quebec who I think will become one of the spokespersons for the Green Party as this thing moves ahead. They've got what's happened in New Brunswick. It just can't get much worse, and I really did try, as you know, right here on this show, and viewers will know, not being partisan, I continue to give the leader the benefit of the doubt, even when he won his by-election. I said, I think maybe he's finding his footing, but it's just been one thing after another. The best and probably the only thing he can do, and I'm sorry to sound so negative for the NDP, but the shift is going green, and the best thing he can do is try and shore up the existing ridings he has. But with all due respect to him, he should check with the incumbent NDP MPs there to make sure they want him there. They're just in very, very bad shape. It'll take a miracle. I still believe in miracles, but this is a bad situation for the NDP.
Marie, what do you think?
Well, I think the NDP's problems is twofold. I think they are very disorganized because they don't have a lot of staff, because a lot of people have left over the years, whether to go into provincial politics or just to do something else, and which leads to organizational problems like what we've seen recently, candidates bowing out of being candidates for the nomination. So you saw Sid Ryan bow out of Oshawa, and he decided not to try and be the nominee in Oshawa. You've seen a lady in Simcoe North take the same decision. And what that does is, well, first of all, you have half your candidates a week possibly from the rid drop. And what it also does is it completely demotivates your organizers on the ground, right? I was talking to the president of the Simcoe North Riding Association today, and I said, well, are you going to have a candidate? What if the rid drops Sunday? What are you going to do? He said, you know what, at this point, it's not my problem. They did this. It's on their knees, and they can fix it. It's their mess. That's not good going into an election when, granted, the NDP might not win Simcoe North, but when people are demotivated, it just makes the work even harder. And then they're having trouble in the polls, which explains that, you know, we talked about the NDP in New Brunswick on Friday. They're having trouble in the polls. They did very poorly in the provincial election. It's not that surprising that people might turn to the Green Party. I think it's going to be very difficult. And to go back to the point that Mr. Singh might focus on certain ridings where he wants to keep his MPs, like in Quebec or in other places, that could be smart, but then it also angers people where you don't go, as Tiffany pointed out. People are angry that he doesn't show up to New Brunswick to help them. And so, honestly, I feel like they are in so much trouble 1 week from the rid drop or 2 weeks from the rid drop that I don't know how they can fix it so close to game time.
I'll play devil's advocate for a second, and obviously we keep talking about how anything can happen in a campaign.
Sure.
I know what you mean. I just feel like I can picture it 2 months from now when they do better than expected, and everyone's like, oh boy.
They'll do better than expected, but
the expectations are pretty low right now.
has been leader for a while,
Yeah,
and the trend has been the same, right? We haven't seen a lot of progress.
Let me ask you then.
Fascinating is
Okay,
to
go ahead.
see that the Liberals seem like almost dead, go back years. Before the 2015, some people were talking about amalgamate with the NDP.
Yeah.
Then the Bloc was declared dead on no more pertinence, no more this. They must laugh right now because they still have a certain percentage, maybe not high enough for them to be that much of a factor, but still
But it took an election
there.
cycle.
And all the undecided people, we're talking about maybe 30-some% of people that answers those surveys. So people who are listening to us are falling, probably a lot of them, in the I don't know category. So when we say everything is possible, it's because depending how the campaign goes, and I'm sorry, David, but I do not think that the Greens have the organizations. They've been running election on one riding only, which was Elizabeth May, always center of everything. Now they have to think, oh, maybe we can steal this, but do they have the organization, the infrastructure?
David,
I doubt it.
What do the Greens have to do to capitalize? If the NDP, as Stockwell says, is quote unquote toast, what do the Greens have to do to capitalize on that, to make the vote? Because we know there's a competition for that vote, right?
Well, I'll have to remind everyone, you don't need to apologize to me because I left the party 10 years ago, and my main critique was that the focus was all about the leader. Exactly. When I ran for leadership 10 years ago, this is no longer sour grapes, I assure you. It was, you've got to build the party. This can't, yes, you absolutely want to get the leader elected. No question, people expect that, and the symbolism of that's really important. But you have to build a party. And the infrastructure has to be there, and the sense among people across the country has to be that you do care about us. You see that now in New Brunswick, where you've got New Democrats feeling like that isn't there. That being said, you've got 338 ridings, and you've got 10 provinces and 3 territories. That is the heck. You wonder why the planes are so important and why so much darn flying and CO2 emissions are part of the campaign is because everyone expects you to be there, and when you're not, they howl. To your question about what's necessary, trench work. Hate to use that analogy, but good, plain organization is what's needed. And it's essential in every constituency that people, they build their associations and they keep them up and they understand that you are in this to elect, yes, of course you're in it to raise issues, but you're in this to elect members. And that requires tried and true techniques to do that and lists and fundraising and all of that.
Tiffany, do you think that infrastructure is in place in order for the Greens to capitalize on whatever happens with the NDP?
So I think in some specific areas, possibly. Ontario, in the last election, elected their Green leader, and so that area might have a strong local organization that could carry something. But to the point earlier, for a strategy for the last few elections that's really focused specifically on specific ridings, I could see them perhaps being able to grow from those ridings and focus maybe on a couple more here and there where the infrastructure exists, but not too much further growth than that targeted piece.
Stockwell, last word to you.
What will happen is you're going to see the Greens in, first of all, I do believe they're going to pick up their support, they're going to pick up the numbers, and they may surprise some people, especially in those ridings where it's going to be close between a Liberal and a Conservative. You will see Greens hiving off some of the support that may have gone Liberal, but then you've got Max Bernier on the other side hiving off some support that might have gone Conservative. So in some areas, they will be the king or queen maker, and in others, they're going to pick up support.
Obviously, I disagree with them. Clearly, I have a different view about our vehicle. I think that we have a really ambitious and complete plan to tackle climate change, and we also bring this idea of social justice, that what is really the idea of the Green New Deal with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm sorry that they left us, but I will continue to do my job.
That was NDP Deputy Leader Alexandre Boulary speaking with us earlier in the show. He was reacting to some provincial defections today. 14 former NDP candidates in New Brunswick announced they're fed up with the party and they're throwing their support behind the Greens, both provincially and federally. So what happened? Jonathan Richardson was the federal NDP's national executive member representing Atlantic Canada until defecting today to the Greens. He joins us now from Moncton. Hi there, nice to see you, Mr. Richardson. Thanks for making time for us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So when did you make this decision and why?
Well, I think the decision obviously was not done overnight because, over time you are spending a lot of time with friends and people that you've grown relationships with. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be able to speak for all 14 candidates because they all have all their different reasons for defecting. So I'm going to keep it more to kind of my reason more. And I think in 2014, when I joined the NDP, I was doing a lot of non-for-profit work with vulnerable sectors. And those vulnerable sectors were getting a lot of their funding cut from the government. And instead of sitting by, I decided, I'm going to join a political movement. And at that point, I wasn't going to join the Liberals or the Conservatives because I knew that there wasn't much room for me to go there. But the NDP seemed like a viable choice. But as the election and after Tom Mulcair's election and as time has gone down, then, we have here now, the New Brunswick NDP has had the worst election result in 40 years. We don't have any federal NDP candidates in New Brunswick. The Greens have 3 MLAs and they've taken a lot of interest for New Brunswick and they do believe in the same values that I believe in. So if I'm going to help these people that I want to help every day, then you have to have the vehicle to do so.
So is this basically a question of viability then? Is it not that you inherently disagree with the platform of the NDP, but rather you think that the Greens have a better shot? Is that accurate?
Oh, that's completely accurate. I don't blame the leader. I don't blame the NDP at all. And if anything, I love the experience that they gave me to be a provincial campaign director, to be able to sit on the executive. But at the end of the day, when I joined politics, it was to help people. And if there's no vehicle to do that, then there's nobody to help. I just can't help people that way.
How come you feel so sure that they won't be the vehicle? They're insisting that anything can still happen. Polls aren't everything. The poll the only poll that matters is later. I take your point and I know that all 14 of you have made that Mr. Singh never visited there since becoming NDP leader. But how come you reach the point where you're willing to write them off?
Well, I think that, the feedback that the NDP is giving you, their responses and stuff like that, that's the same responses that I've used as a campaign operative when other journalists have asked me the same kind of question. So I'm very well aware that when things aren't going good, then you kind of just shrug them off as being either fake news or just not like that. But at the end of the day, being on the election planning committee and being on the federal executive, I know what the focus of the federal party is going to be this election. And New Brunswick is just simply not it.
And what about, but I mean, your move today, I understand the local context, but your move today arguably makes it even harder for them in other parts of the country, right? Like the headline today was not the ad that they released this morning. It was that there are a number of people who previously supported them who defected to, what could be seen as their main competition.
Yep. And the issue that we got into there, and I've had a lot of conversations, do I go provincial Green and federal NDP? Unfortunately, you can't do one without the other. You have to be either all into Green or all into the NDP. And if I'm going to help the people here in New Brunswick, in my hometowns, in my community, it is going to be the Green Party provincially who's going to be able to do that. But with that said, I also know that by looking at the polls and looking at the fundraising numbers, that the Green Party of Canada is going to be in an upward surge this election, and I'm very confident about that, and I'd be happy to support them, especially in some of our really good ridings, such as Fredericton, where I live, and we have a great candidate there.
What kind of a shot do you think the Greens have? How much more viable do you think they are than the NDP? I mean, they're polling in many places above what we'd expect, but not at the point where they're going to, supersede all expectations.
Well, yes, of course. I know that it takes a significant amount of money to run a campaign, and none of the NDP or the Greens are even remotely close to that. But the difference between the NDP and the Greens, in my opinion, is that the Greens have good regional bases to work from, as opposed to maybe a more spread out that the NDP has. So they have a lot of shots in BC and Vancouver Island, and we've seen the Greens become official opposition in PEI and three members here in New Brunswick. So I think that these could be some beachheads that we could use to grow our movement and probably even hold the balance of power in this next House of Commons.
Did you ever talk to the party's leader or other members of the executive that you were on to express these types of concern before making such a public move today?
Oh yes, so I've been very clear to the president of the party and to Guy Caron. I've had a conversation with him that my reasons for being in the NDP was to help people. But I didn't wake up one day dreaming of orange. I woke up because there was people who were really suffering and we needed a vehicle to do that. And I'm not a policy wonk, I'm more of an organizer, so I know that there's going to be people who are going to say, oh, the Greens are less left or they're more conservative and stuff like that. But the real value, and I think when you're trying to decide which party to be with, is you want to look at the membership. And the members that I associate with back in Fredericton, there's no differentiation between what I believe and what they believe.
You know that some of your former colleagues are going to say this is sour grapes. Another one of the defectors today, who happens to be your mom, at one point, I believe, considered leading the party. She obviously isn't the leader. Your response to the challenge that this could be about sour grapes.
Well, I think that if I was advising the NDP, that's exactly what I would tell them to do. Go for the personal attacks. It'll lessen my credibility, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be helping people who are at risk, children who are very aggressive and all the jobs. So I'm going to be happy knowing that I'm helping them. Obviously, I'm not happy that I had to come on the media and do this, but it was a decision from the group that they felt that I should be representing them on this.
And how did it all happen that this became such a coordinated thing? Like, I totally understand where you're coming from, how you went through that thought process. You're on the federal side of things. How did it come about that this was decided we're going to do this publicly and in a coordinated fashion?
Well, it came to the decision kind of just talking to the federal the Greens and to the provincial Greens and said, this is a move that we want to make, and we want to make this, we want to really push people to that side, because I don't want people to go back to the Liberals or the Conservatives at all. And so I'm very happy that there was another party that I could see myself aligned with. But at the same time, if I just did it quietly, and if they did it quietly, then it would be as if nothing existed. So there wouldn't be any impact on growing some local Green MPs who could potentially get to the House of Commons. So again, it's at the end, there's a lot of collateral damage that happens when you kind of do these types of things. But But for whatever reason, my reasoning is that I'm going to help some people through legislative change, and that's the way that I need to do it.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for making time for us, Mr. Richardson, this evening. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Vashi Kapellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.